yesterday's papers? Who wants yesterday's girl?
Welcome to the latest edition of Looped In Live, presented by Methuen Family Health Center. My name is Tim Wood. I'm the editor of Loop Weekly. You may see we have a guest right out of the gate today. Lou, we are on tight schedule.
Yes.
So now when I ask for guests, everybody razzes me. I say no, we're just gonna just for like a half hour. They're like, have you watched your show lately? So
I know I've limited you today to less than twice your show length.
No.
Yes.
I haven't gone 3 hours.
No, I meant.
Oh yes, yes.
I can't give you 2 hours.
We have a hard out of 12:30 today, so
we can do 12:40 if you need.
Maybe 12:40.
Yeah.
We've got Jimmy or James.
You can call me Jimmy today.
All right, we're gonna call him Jimmy McCarty today. Methuen City Councilor. He's here out of the gate. We also have State Representative candidate Christina Minicucci from North Andover. She is running for Diana DeZoglio's seat along with Lisa Yared Ferry. We will have her on roughly around 11:45. And we will have you on in the comments. Been a very active comment stream the last few weeks. I don't know why. Nothing going on. But join us on the stream. Join us by calling 978-659-0072.
Excellent.
Boom. So I thought we were probably, by this time in the summer, I thought we were probably going to be doing Big Brother recaps, because I'm a huge Big Brother fan, and I know there's plenty of you out there.
Do I have to start watching Big Brother?
No.
Okay.
Clearly, we have our own reality TV show going on here in Methuen. It was joking with the MCTV guys just about like if you actually pulled a rating, you might outrank the local stations right now in Methuen. But
yeah,
the streams have been active online. Everybody you talk to around town, they've all been watching. They've seen you, sir. And welcome. Thank you for coming in. We've been booking, because of everything that's going on, we kind of been booking the current event slot last second, and I just called Jimmy yesterday, and he graciously, we offered to bring him in on the phone, Lou, and he said no, I've got to have the real experience.
Glad to hear it.
So I tried to tell him the studio's not that glamorous, but
no, it's not. But
so, how are you?
I'm doing well.
How's your sleep?
It's funny. We get out of these meetings at 11 o'clock, and sometimes there's a little bit of a scrum afterwards. I try to get out of there, and when I get home, I
just
find
like
myself
here.
eating
Getting
dinner
out of the building is the worst part.
Yeah,
I find myself eating dinner at 11:30, and sometimes you're just thinking about the 4 hours that just went by. Next thing you know, it's 1 a.m.
Yeah,
and then you got to wake up and start.
It's hard to go right to bed. You got to decompress from all this information floating through your head for the last 5 hours.
Yeah, but I think it's good stuff. Definitely, the community's learning along with us.
Yes,
and I'm sure that they have a lot of late nights as well. And you think people tune out at 11 and they don't?
It's very clear. No, I've been being asked to do like post game shows on our feed, and so we've done a few of them. But last night you guys talked me into submission.
Well, I got to tell you, it was nice to have a night where there's nobody in the audience. The mayor wasn't there.
Yes.
And we were honestly able to really focus on what was in front of us.
That was a legitimate workshop.
And there was no conflicts going on, and we were actually able to communicate openly, because that's a hard part about being a counselor, where everyone's afraid of the open meeting laws. So we might get an email we don't like, and we can't reply to it because everyone's attached to it, and we don't want to violate any rules. So it's really nice, and we haven't had executive sessions. So it's been a real challenge getting 9 minds into the same mind, and that's one of the struggles with the council. But it's definitely good to have different points of view, and we can all collaborate like we did last night. It's refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, this is uncharted territory in terms of this homeroom petition, and you've met. Well, tonight will be the third time this week meeting on the topic, right? Or is that third time this week? Yes. Yeah, it's hard to keep track. Yeah, and then there was one last week. Yeah, so, but I mean, you guys, trying to draft this document in terms of how to ask for this money, how much to ask for, what kind of oversight you want. There was a lot of progress last night.
I'd say so. We definitely have to start the volleying process with the State House, where there was an initial draft of $4 million, 4 sections, not much strings attached to it. That got kicked right back, and what came back was 10 sections, $10 million. So we have to find the shoe that we want to wear.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the process, where last night I think we made it through 5 sections out of the 10, and we were really trying our best to check the mayor. So every time there was an executive power being used, we did our best for the council to use their legislative power to then check and confirm that very action. And so there was mostly that last night. And then there were some things where, we spend a lot of time in Section 3, and then you get to Section 5, and there's a little disclaimer that says, fiscal stability officer has the ability to waive Section 3 and proceed how they. So it's like, all right, let's take that out and see where we can get. This
is not the sexiest stuff if you're watching at home, but I mean, this is
very important.
This legislation, this document is something that will impact the city for at least 10 years in terms of paying off the bond. And in case you're just coming to the game here, folks, so because of the you got to call it what it is, the illegal deficit spend of the school department going over about $3.975 million. The city was forced to ask the state for a loan to cover that. So we've paid the money back out of cash, which I was still wondering where that money just appears from last night, but I never got to that. I never heard that. But so we've paid it back, but now we need to replenish wherever we took it from within the various accounts. So we're asking for city's asking for
all
this
this
loan.
Discussion, all this Facebook living of meetings for hours and hours and hours, and we're at the point where I don't know where the money came from?
Yeah, no. So it's come from a free cash account, essentially, that a reserve account that they need to replenish. That is meant to just move money around, within different budget departments.
Guessing the state requires a certain level of open funding, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're at the point where $4 million was asked for. As you said, kicked back. The request was kicked back. The state is recommending potentially asking for more, up to $10 million in kind of almost like a home equity line of credit in layman terms, where you don't have to access the money, but it's there if you want it. But you guys last night, not so much on the $10 million.
No. So I think that's been a result of a lot of, input from the community, where everyone knows how, look at our stabilization fund. Look at the snow and ice removal, where we say, oh, there's some money, let's use that. We're done, solved. And now we don't have a stabilization fund. We don't have any free cash. We don't have reserves. And we're in the debt markets, fishing around for money, and we have to come up with terms that you're not going to like at the end of the day. So we're doing our best to make those terms as pleasant as possible, but at the end of the day, I mean, we're taking somebody else's money, and so we don't have a lot of wiggle room. So we're trying to, wiggle, and so
a lot of wiggling.
Yeah, we need to definitely start building up our reserves and our stabilization funds, because the school committee had mentioned, this is happening all over the state, and it is. I mean, there's articles all over the place where, the foundation fund was short $1 billion, and I know the teachers are lobbying hard at the State House to get that readjusted. I know Councilor Hamilton and myself passed the resolution in town, in the city, showing, okay, legislators, the city of Methuen supports this piece of legislation. And this is happening all over the place. Nick DeZoglio was right. There's 20 communities or so. However, Sean Cronin came in the other night and said, yes, it's a problem, but the other communities have had that cushion, that reserve, that stabilization, that free cash to absorb it. And Methuen is the only municipality in the Commonwealth that can't. So obviously there's an issue here. And
yeah, I mean, it's happening in 20 communities, like you said, but I mean, it's
as far as deficit spending goes, yeah.
Yeah, actually having that, it's a very small number going back to the 80s in terms of how many municipalities actually have to take this step.
Yep. And unfortunately, going back to so what we were given, the 10 section, 10 million, that was basically a draft that was given to Lynn. Now, there's a lot of people in the community that say, we're not Lynn, so let's try to find the Methuen package. And so that's what this process is.
You guys last night, so it seemed like you're kind of in the ballpark, the mean average, somewhere right around right over 5 million. Where are you personally in terms of how much we should ask for?
So I was aligned with Councilor Saber, who said, let's borrow what we need to fill the hole. And the reason why I was aligned with that was I had a comment where the more we authorize, the more tempted we are to be to tap it. I mean, history has just shown that in the city of Methuen. So if we do, and then Councilor Vidler had said, well, it's going to take a little bit of cost to set up the infrastructure of the financial piece that comes in from the state. We have to pay those people. So rather than having that right out of the gate coming out of local revenues, let's maybe provide a slight cushion. So we were saying 5 million, and then some councilors were saying, well, let's do 5.5, and then so that's where that average came in.
In terms of the amount of oversight, and some of the comments on the online stream last night were, amusing in terms of tone, which you tend to be during the meeting at times, amusing in your tone. You're a little sarcastic sometimes.
We're gonna get along.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. And I want to get to that. We'll get to that in the next segment. Just your approach, because it's impressive. You for a new counselor, you've come in with not cockiness but confidence in what you're talking about. And so, but in terms of the amount of oversight, a lot of folks were like, well, geez, if you're borrowing money, you usually don't get to set the terms. And what I was trying to tell folks is, we're not setting that. We're making a proposal. The state can come back and say, no, you can't do that. But you essentially also were debating on terms of the types of oversight that you'd want, and with less borrowing, that gives you a little bit more wiggle room in terms of having a say in that. I would think.
You would think. Where, the less you climb into debt, the less I think that's negotiable. I think there is a correlation there, and it's tough because we have these factions in the city where one side's saying the state's not going to budge, a comma is not going to change in that piece of legislation. You're running out of time. Hurry up. Authorize a $10 million. You don't have to use it. And then there's other sides saying, you have till November when they set the tax rate to work this. Let the process play out. Have the volume at the State House. And then we hear about this legislative clock where once formal sessions end at the end of July, a legislator could stand up and block it. And that may be true, but is that going to happen? Is somebody going to stick their neck out and say, I don't know. I don't see that playing out. I don't think it's the best political move to make. But
you guys have also been very adamant that you're not going to be forced into. You keep getting stuff shoved down your throat in terms of time crunches. Keep getting stuff at the last second. Is it accurate to say, I don't want you to speak for the whole council, but is it accurate from just for you, are you tired of that at this point, and just at the point where, no, we're going to do this for however long we need to do this?
That's my school of thought. You use the time, you use the process. Government's meant to move at glacier speeds. And this council got thrown in the deep end day one in January. We had an emergency petition in the mayor's office to reclassify his whole staff.
Yeah, first
and it was
meeting.
like $10,000, $15,000 raises all around. We're all wide-eyed sitting there. It's our first meeting. We just got sworn in. We had the Pledge of Allegiance, and now we don't even know what a salary reclassification is and what an emergency petition is. And I just had a gut check where I said, this doesn't feel right. I feel when someone says you don't have a choice, and then, there's time crunches, it's just there's flags that go up. I think I was the lone no vote, and I didn't even necessarily know. When in doubt, I vote no. I mean, I think most voters do that as well.
Good idea with spending, yeah.
And you were kind of Nostradamus there, honestly. You were the one that said, talk to the hand, like let's slow this down. You're not going to just, steamroll us here.
If you ever see a cut in spending, go ahead.
What's that?
If you ever see a cut in cut in spending, go ahead and vote yes. When it's more pay or more spending, it's good to take your time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I have a running joke with the councilors where, they're like, oh, should we table this? And I say, I'll table anything because, there's no harm in that. And when, there's some people who don't want to see that happen because they want their stuff passed through.
Yeah.
So it's one of those battles where there's a lot of blocking and tackling going on for sure. And it's a labyrinth, and you just have to navigate through it, and you have to talk to as many people as you can because, you talk to 3 attorneys, you get 3 different opinions. So what do? You talk to everyone you can and try to figure out what the consensus is.
Let's take a quick break. A lot to get to. Let's get through the commercials. Thank the folks that helped pay for this. We will be right back here on Looped In Live. We're talking to Councilor Jimmy McCarty here on Looped In Live, presented by Methuen Family Health Center. A big shout out to the folks over at AFC Urgent Care. They've been big supporters of us since the beginning as the title sponsor of Ranger Nation Radio, and we are big fans of theirs. AFC Urgent Care, the right care right now. You'll never need an appointment. Got that persistent cough and cold, that cut that needs a few stitches, or need a sports physical and don't want to wait weeks to get into your primary doctor? AFC's streamlined approach helps you be seen quickly and feel better fast. In Methuen, in the Merrimack Street Medical Professionals Building, 380R Merrimack Street. In North Andover as well, in the Burton Grill Plaza. 8 to 8 Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 Saturday and Sunday. Go to afcurgentcare.com for more details. Back on Looped In Live, presented by Methuen Family Health Center. Family is everything. That's why it's right in the name at Methuen Family Pharmacy, where you can get pharmacy services by the Methuen community for the Methuen community. You don't have to be a patient of Methuen Family Health Center to use the pharmacy either. Drop by 147 Pelham Street in Methuen, right off exit 47 on Route 93, near the junction of 213, and get your medication from the friendly faces you already see in your neighborhood. Learn more at glfhc.org/pharmacy. Methuen Family Health Center is a proud sponsor of Looped In Live and a sponsor of the Stars of the Week segment on Ranger Nation Radio. Huge thanks to the folks at Methuen Family Health Center. Back with Councilor Jimmy McCarty. So before we get farther, you've got a candidate that you're ride or die with into November. Tell us who you're working with.
So I am the field director of Quentin Palfrey's campaign. He's running for lieutenant governor on the Democratic ticket. And so the field director basically handles all the voter contact on the ground and then overhead communication, which is kind of what the comms piece of it, but I'm mostly grassroots operations. So he's honestly one of the greatest minds I think I've come across, where he's spent his life in all levels and branches of government. He's been in the White House as a senior advisor for jobs and competitiveness for the Obama administration. Here in Massachusetts, he was chief of the healthcare division, also assistant attorney general to the Coakley administration, and has been on the front lines of a lot of social justice issues of voter suppression. During the last general election, he actually dispatched a team of 4,000 attorneys into battleground states that were here in Massachusetts. So he's an expert in, the economy, healthcare, and the legal arena for sure. And it's his first time running for office, and we are doing a lot with a little, and it's exciting stuff. It's funny, your next guest, Christina Minicucci, actually went to high school with Quentin.
Oh, nice.
So when we had our meet and greet in Methuen, she had come, and she's an awesome person. It's her first time running for office. And unfortunately, she's running against Lisa Yared, who actually brought me into the political arena, where she was working up on Beacon Hill, and I was in. She got me an internship at a firm that specialized in grassroots activity. So I was able to use all that information and get myself a seat on the council. So it's definitely, I'm enjoying all of this. And so, now I'm getting I've spent a lot of time getting candidates into office, and now I'm the actual candidate trying to wiggle around and figure out, what's going on in City Hall. So if we want to get back into that, I'm happy to do that.
What are you doing? What's your story? What do you, is that what you're doing during the day right now?
Yeah, so we usually, on a campaign, you generally don't talk to people before 10 a.m. where you might turn them off. So from usually 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. is usually when people shut off. So we're doing voter contact, and there's multiple ways to talk to voters. But yeah, so I started in 2014 was my first campaign. It was the casino referendum. And every year from there, I've just kind of been in 15. I was involved in the mayor's race down in Quincy. And 16 was the No on 2 ballot that was on for the voters to keep the cap on charter schools. And then in 2017, I was, it was a slow election year, so I was basically helping, I was slightly involved in the mayor's race in Framingham. It was their first ever mayor. And then a couple of the Quincy city councilors are running. So, there's getting them equated with the voter file, which is kind of like how you target the voters and figure out who's going to show up, who's not, where you should focus your resources towards. And so that's kind of where I live. And I also ran my own campaign. So 2017 was definitely a local level year for me, but usually it's a statewide effort. And then this year back on the statewide scene with a very busy election year for Massachusetts.
Why, you did a lot behind the scenes. Why did you decide to jump in and get on the other side of the from behind the curtain to in
term limits?
Front, yeah.
Term limits. So in Methuen, obviously, both central seats had opened up, and Lisa actually helped me out a lot in our precinct, which is 10, which is the one that's Diana Zoglio's district as well. So it was definitely term limits. It seemed like a great opportunity, and there wasn't a lot of people running. So it would just seem like a good time and good opportunity for sure.
Yeah, you've been very active in Methuen, in terms of just a lot of volunteerism and even before this election, in terms of, and I've been asking everybody this, if you knew then what you've seen now, would you have run?
Yes, I would have still.
Yeah.
I honestly, I enjoy problems. I enjoy trying to solve them and understand them so that when the next one arises, you're better equipped to address it. And I secretly enjoy this stuff. I really do. And when we have, the quiet meetings are good because, you don't really have to do anything. But when the public's engaged, and we have a lot of problems ahead of us, and some of them are tied together, and the public's been involved, and they're learning along with us, and I think that makes a better community in the long run. So.
You talk about being thrown into the deep end, like you said. I mean, you know, just the one issue after another has continued to just snowball in terms of waking the public up. And you've had more and more people at council meetings, more and more folks watching from home. What I continually hear, and it's, you know, what I see is, and this is what I was getting at earlier. You know, you're not afraid to speak your mind. At times, you may come off as a little cocky or a little sarcastic, but you always manage to get people's attention and then hit them back with logic.
Yeah, I've been getting a lot of compliments on having an independent approach where,
Yes.
you know, some people influence other people, and I've been trying to steer clear of all that the best that I can, and it kind of helps a little bit where it's almost being like a free agent. Everyone wants to get you on their team, and then you're able to kind of keep everyone in check a little bit and acquire their information.
Yeah.
And then once you can acquire their information, you understand where both sides are coming from, and you can try to get in the middle of the road.
When you talk about Big Brother, that's the winning strategy on Big Brother over 20 seasons.
I haven't seen the show.
Oh, dude, you're missing out. All right, Rich. Rich, a good question. What do you believe is the way to get this city back on track financially?
So we need to set a budget. We need to appropriate money, and everything else needs to work inside the appropriation. That's it. And it's not a complicated issue, yet there seems to be a lot of players involved, and there seems to be a lot of tactics being used where, you know, we have legal issues, contract issues, and our job as a councilor, we're the purse. We control the finance. So if we set an appropriation, all contracts in the city are subject to that appropriation. We're not saying you can't pay A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z. That's not we're not the executive. So you can pay a police captain whatever you want to pay them, but here's your allowance. Make it work inside your allowance. And so then we get, you know, well, what about arbitration, triple damages, all that jazz? And I'm not sure if the triple damages is in play if you look at the way that this has been playing out, where they came down from a 98...
Talking about the police contract.
Talking about, you know, how do we get the city back on track? So, you know, just the fact that, you know, they had a 98% increase, they came down to 18. That, like, why, if you had triple damages in the bag, why would you come off your horse?
They did not.
Well, wouldn't you rather get triple damages on $500,000 opposed to $200,000?
They're trying to say we live here and we didn't.
So we'll only take an 18% raise?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's they still have leverage.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I don't think
No, they don't, because the state comes in, receivership, the contract's voided.
No, they don't
That's
void.
the amount of their leverage.
No, they don't void. They don't void on the first three steps of this pyramid, from what I understand.
Yeah, even Sean Cronin had mentioned, like, everyone's under the assumption. He wanted to set the record straight. He said a receiver doesn't come in and just burn down the whole forest and start new. There still is contract.
She untangles the knots.
So I honestly don't think we need to go to a receivership to fix this problem. Where, okay, so I mean, I don't plan on accepting an 18% increase and then 7 on the back end. That's 25 points over 3 years.
So so that's going to come up tonight, and
we've got Jerry who wants to get on the program. Go ahead, Jerry.
Hey, Jerry.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This point is for Mr. McCarty. Mr. McCarty, you know, I realize that the contract, and I agree with many of my friends that the contract even though it's been retrofitted, it still is a major expenditure. But I've been doing some research on the school department, and I'm really amazed that it almost seems like the school department is a separate municipality. They have their own administrators. They.
So I just want to. So this is Jerry. This is Jerry McCall, and we speak all the time. So he called me when I was in the lobby. I said I was going to call him when we left. So there's really no need.
Yep. And same here. He's very involved in the political process. And,
yes.
Has been for many years. So
expert in environmental.
Yes.
And water, and is very helpful to me when it comes to the Merrimack River and Clean River projects. And so he's definitely a great resource.
Yes.
I use him a lot. He's one of those guys behind the scenes where if there's a question regarding the environment, Jerry's definitely your guy.
So in terms of tonight, and you know, the expectation is that you guys are going to approve this. Approve this memorandum of understanding.
I think the soft roll call is that. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
from your perspective, it's not. You're voting. I mean, you're voting no on it.
You posted it the other day. I mean, Section 4 of the thing basically hog ties the council, and like it takes away our appropriation power. Where we're the city council, we appropriate the money. The union doesn't appropriate the money.
Yes.
So they're trying to basically take on that luxury, or that privilege, I should say, and I don't feel comfortable with that. I think we say, hey, listen, we applaud your effort to find a negotiation, but this isn't it. So I think, especially in the financial circumstance we're in as a community, it was all in good faith that it was a 0-2-2. And that's where I would like to see it. So just for the sake of the conversation, if this thing plays out, if that memorandum gets approved, I plan on voting no, but if it gets approved, problem solved. Because you can't then go into their budget and say, okay, yeah, that's cute, but we're going to do this.
Yes.
That's bad faith.
Right.
So
well, it voids per the memo, it voids the memo of understanding.
Right. I think we should just
which we all have to understand is the basic principle of the memo of understanding. The whole idea of this is to sweep this under the rug. That's the whole idea of it. It's the whole purpose of it.
I don't sweep it under the rug. I mean, they're meant to get a resolution out of it, but I don't even think, quite honestly, it doesn't seem that the mayor wanted to sweep this under the rug. The mayor was ready to go to court on it, but
I don't know what the mayor's doing. And
Yeah.
I've tried to figure that out. I've tried to figure out the strategy, the plan, and I've reached out, and it's hard to get an answer.
Bill wants to jump in. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Phil here. How are you?
Hey, Phil. Oh, it's Phil.
Listen, I'm going to put my 2 cents in. I'll make a couple of comments, and I'll hang up, and you guys can have at it. Number one, a lot of people are making this sound like it's a one-year blip. When I was a city councilor under the Manzi administration, when we left, and Jim, you can obviously check with Tom Kelly, but I'm going to say we had somewhere in the vicinity of $5 million in the stabilization fund.
Oh yeah.
We had free cash. We were well below the levy limit. Now you're at the limit on everything. So what I'm trying to get across, this just didn't happen at 1 year. Through mismanagement of the prior administration, they wiped out everything. So this isn't something that just happened in 1 year. And, and obviously, he was shot $2 million for the school. We gave him $2 million, whatever the hell it was. But, that's just one point I want to make. The other point, I'm really getting upset at the prior council getting the hit for voting on a contract that they sincerely believed was 0, 2, and 2. Number one, the mayor, who actually thought he could negotiate contracts and obviously proved he couldn't, he's like the man setting fire to the building. All right, but he's not responsible for the council. But there are two employees that are directly under the city council, the city solicitor and the city auditor. And maybe they didn't set the fire, but they watched the mayor while he did. And when they came up on that vote for the police contract, it was their duty, it was their responsibility to make aware the city council the impact it was going to have, because nobody is going to convince me that they didn't both know it.
Do you think the solicitor, Phil? Do you think I just want to ask you just on it. Do you think the solicitor has anything more to say than this contract is technically legal?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. He seems to say something about everything else. He say something about that.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. I thought he was going to give a Big Brother recap during one of his speeches last night.
I like Tom Kelly. I've known him for 100 years. I'm sorry he didn't do his responsibility. Every city councilor, when they were getting ready to vote on that, Tom Kelly should have said, it's really not 0, 2, and 2. You're not voting like you did on the other 8 contracts that were actually 0, 2, and 2. I'm sorry, the mayor mismanaged, but these guys, they just stood silently by. And the only other thing, Jim, I know you guys don't want to borrow a whole lot of money. I'm not saying $10 million, but if I was you guys, I would give yourself a lot bigger buffer, because just like I said, over the last previous administration, he wiped out all your reserves. If he didn't have those reserves, you would have been in deficit spending prior to this year. So that's all I got to say, guys. Great show. And Jim, I think you're doing a good job for a rookie. You're okay in my book.
Thanks, Phil.
As always, Phil, thank you. All right, so, and I just want to, I can't agree. I sat and I listened to it at the last council meeting. Listen, as a human to human, I feel bad for Tom Kelly, okay? But the speech that he gave at the last city council meeting about taking all this in and not being able to go to restaurants and being vilified, listen, I'm sorry. It comes right back there. None of this, that was the last line of defense, okay? Whatever you want to say about the as Phil said, and he said it great. Whatever you want to say about the council voting for it, Tom Kelly had an objection, and he had gone through it. He had problems with it, and whether or not he told the mayor, he's definitely admitted that he told city councilors, okay? A couple of city councilors. His duty was to tell the entire council before the vote. So, I'm sorry, Tom. You've done a lot of great things for the city, but on this one, you dropped it. You dropped the ball, and you were the last line of defense. And so... Yeah, that gets me worked up, because I just, and then and again, I love Joyce Campagnon, but for her then get up and then just charter object and get riled up, I just didn't get any of it. I just, it's like, do your job. And
I'm pretty tired of this whole assumption that nobody knew that contract wasn't 0, 2, and 2. I contend everybody knew that contract wasn't 0, 2, and 2. Everybody. I find it incomprehensible that no one involved in this process knew that contract wasn't 0, 2, and 2.
And the only thing that I have said to you on this and to everybody is, I'm just trying to look at it logically in terms of the mayor and his legacy and caring about his legacy and not wanting to burn the bridge behind him, and then on top of the cops, they knew it was more than 0, 2, and 2. Okay, they were trying to get probably closer to 10% because they had been frustrated with the calculations from past contracts, but I contend to this day they did not know $500,000 worth. I mean, what do you?
Yeah, right, Jimmy.
What do you say?
So I'm sure you've heard these whispers around town as well, where they shot high, $500,000, and if they settled at $200,000 or $300,000, that's a pretty good take, right?
That's what you do in a negotiation.
Right.
You shoot high to start, and then we just
this whole thing's a negotiation.
Yeah,
and we're not out of it yet.
Yeah.
So, I've been trying to read into Chapter 150 is Mass General Law, which is all collective bargaining, as much as I could, and there's still a lot to read, and I'm not an attorney, but it sounds like even if this thing went to arbitration over a collective bargaining agreement, that the police could very well win an arbitration, and the judge could say, all right, here's the arbitration award. Then the mayor, as the executive, is required to recommend that. But at the end of the day, even that arbitration subject to council appropriation, we could simply say, hey, nice, but we can't afford it. And this is taxpayer dollar. It's not like we're some multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that's screwing people out of wages, and we have to then come up with a settlement of millions and millions of dollars. This is tax dollars, and so there's a lot of things that are subject to council appropriation, and I'm working as best I can to navigate through that and unravel it. But I think at the end of the day, we need to set a budget and have an appropriated amount of money, just like every other department, and that's going to play huge into this home rule petition, because the state's watching this contract very closely.
very clear.
And if we give 25 points over the next 2 years, then yeah, we're going to have to authorize to borrow more money. I mean, that's not a complicated issue. And there's unions out there, a 3-year deal where, they fight for like 5-6 points, like 2-2-2.
Oh, yeah.
If there's a 3 or 4 on the board, they think they're fleecing the community.
I mean,
and then you throw an 18 out there, it's like, all right, that no.
And Bill did the math, and I tried to explain it in today's article, because it does. It's not just 18 and 7. It equates to they're going to be making 26% more in 2020 than they made in 2018.
Right.
So, it's just.
And listen, you
it's
can
a lot.
look at laws and bylaws, and Jimmy, you're running this down, and there's still a difference between can and should, and that's still going to be alive here in this country and in this government and with taxpayers. Can they get an 18% raise? Yes. Can they stick to the contract? Yes. They could probably fight it. Maybe they could win. They can do a lot of things. Should they? I don't think so.
The only thing that and again, I'm just this is just my reporting, okay? Mm-hmm. This is not my personal opinion, although it does play into my personal opinion, informed by the reporting. I've talked to 12 different 12 different contract law and collective bargaining experts across the country. Everybody I talked to put me on to somebody more renowned or whatever. Every single one of them has said can, should, does not matter when a contract is signed.
Okay.
And that's...
All right, then that's fine. If you want to take that attitude, that's fine. But I don't want to hear from the school department anymore. I don't want to hear from teachers with pink slips. I don't want to hear any of this anymore. If there's no distinction between can and should, if there's no propriety here, if there's no reason here, if that's off the table, then shut the hell up, everybody. Because all I'm hearing is arguments about should, right? That's all I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Is arguments about should. You want to take should off the table? Great. End of discussion.
Couple things just real quick. Rich, Steve Saba did not say that all the counselors knew ahead of the vote the other night. Steve was trying to say, and I talked to him afterwards, he was trying to say that, as you said, whispers around town, this was not a very well-kept secret if they were trying to keep it secret. As early as November, right after the election in December, whispers started going around about this contract, and copies of the contract started being circulated, and so I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to say that every counselor knew ahead of time, but there were rumors as early as probably right after the vote was taken last year that this smelt. And you know, it again. So the other part is, let me just see here.
So I think I don't want. I hate getting into the previous council.
Yeah, absolutely. You can only be accountable for what you're doing.
But in defense of, I think that there's a little bit of both going on, where there could have been councilors that are fully aware, hey, this is an extremely heavy contract, don't worry about it, you know, you're on your way out, whatever. That's possible. And then I also think it's possible that there was a lot of unions that are up for new contracts as the previous administration was going out. And so if you have like 6, 7 contracts in front of you, all CBAs, and you're told, hey, these are all boilerplate language, all 022s. I think that that's possible, where you might take the advice of your auditor and solicitor on that, or even mayor or whatever. So, you know, I've heard, you know, who are the 2 councilors that knew? I've heard every combination, I think, under the sun.
Yes.
So I truly don't know.
I actually heard you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he wasn't on the council. And this guy, you know how people come at you. I've got it on the highest authority. You know, and especially when people are talking to me, they try to put on the scoop hat. And I got it on 15 sources that Jimmy McCarty was one of the councilors that was told.
Yeah, I orchestrated the whole thing.
So, in all seriousness, and again, I want to get you out of here. Christina is waiting very patiently. The situation as it stands now, you've got to work out. You got to vote on on this memo. You've got to vote on go through the police, the fire, the school department budgets tonight. You've got this homeroom petition. Once you guys start to get past this, there's been a lot of yelling, loud voices coming from the executive side of the table here. There seems to be a lot of distrust that's formed. Where do you see the relation at between the mayor and the council right now, and can it be rectified?
So, on the latter part of that statement, if it were to be rectified, I think it would take well into the next year to do that. I mean, in my opinion, this mayor came in and just started setting some fires, and now he can't put them out. He's taken it in from all fronts. And so I made a joke to him before things got actually to the point where they are now, where I said, hey, once everyone gets off your back, let me know so I can hop back on. And, you know, he said, yeah, he laughed, he appreciated it. But now, that was 3 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole...
So, I think he's taking on a lot, and, you know, I'm hearing, you know, recall efforts being put together.
How much of it was self-inflicted, do you believe?
Well, I mean, he's the executive, and he makes executive decisions, so I don't know where he can possibly point to.
Because he has pointed in a lot of different directions. He's said that this situation was inherited, which I mean he was I mean it's like it's like setting the new narrative, and Trump, and again, whoever you stand on Trump, I have said it, I'm not going to get political on Trump. I'm just going to say very, very matter of fact, Trump is a master manipulator of message. And he has, and it's kind of what we've been getting here in terms of trying to reset the narrative that he inherited stuff. I mean, it's okay, and I apologize. I jumped in on you. A lot of self-inflicted stuff here. A lot of disrespectful conversations and disrespectful allegations thrown at the council.
I mean, you have to understand, he also has a job to protect his office. So if we're going in there and we're slashing, he has to get up and scream and, you know, put up the resistance, and then we say, okay, maybe we did enough here. And then maybe he walks out of there with more money than the previous mayor's lot. Like, I think his request is $397,000.
Yeah.
We cut it down to like 304 or something. And then you look at the Zani administration, he was in the 290 something. So like, there's still growth there, and I think that there's a game within the game where you have to put on the theatrics and make it appear as though, don't do this to me, and then we do it, and then we're like, all right, we did it.
As the mayor, as the chairman of the school committee, as a political candidate, what are his priorities in terms of his protection? Who should he be protecting first? His chief executive? Or the city? Or the school department? Or
I think
political supporters?
So
what's that priority?
I think in order to protect himself, he has to fracture City Hall. And so he got rid of the city clerk. He got rid of the community development board. He got rid of the DPW director. And now there was a big fiasco with the trash in the course of 6 months. And I think,
And Wheeler Street.
When you're taking out the regime and you're replacing it then with your own people, you're kind of insulating yourself. And so I think that is what's going on there. It's a divide and conquer strategy. Yeah. And there's definitely people who maybe haven't been attacked yet, or replaced, or thrown out, or pushed out, or whatever. And they're probably now looking around saying, who are my allies? All my old buddies are gone. What do I do? And so...
What's the first thing you had to take on after you were sworn in?
Readjusting the salaries.
How much?
What's that?
How much?
How much what?
On average for the raises, the readjusted reclassification
Well,
of the
that
salaries?
turned into everything you saw during the budget process.
Yeah.
The chief of staff salary was going from like 86 to 98
at that point,
after 6 months.
At that point, was the mayor aware of the $4 million deficit in the school department?
Yes.
At that point, was he aware of the numbers in the police contract?
Yes. Yes.
Where are his priorities?
I mean, that's a great point, Lou. That's what I've been saying. And again, listen, this is not an attack show, okay? But we do have to talk about what's going on, and that is at the core, is that issues were known. That's what I don't understand about this budget in general, and specifically the budget that he asked for within his office. It was absurd, obscene, every adjective you can throw at it.
Then he stood there, or sat there the night before last, and accused you
with
of
indignation.
Yes, and accused you of politicizing this because you opposed salary increases to his chief of staff.
Yes, pretty much.
We all got lectured.
So, okay, I'm letting you go. I promise.
You told me you're gonna kick me out at 12. So
yeah. All right. So we're 4 minutes ahead.
And Christina's outside.
Yeah. Christina's like, what the? So.
I love this.
So, okay. It would take. You said it would take into next year. What can he do in terms of, like, what are the steps that he needs to do to repair, in terms of just how to get things done with this council, instead of just shoving things at them and saying, I'm the mayor, deal with it?
I mean, obviously there has to be a line of communication to start. And I honestly think that he's going to have to worry about his re-election, which is coming up.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if, I mean, I've met with him. I've walked into his office unannounced on 2 occasions. I've sat down. I've spoken to him. He's actually, he's a cool guy when you get him behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Very personable. It's hard to, it's hard to
separate sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and his chief of staff, Paul, does a great job of creating a buffer there, because that's his job. Unfortunately, I think the council feels as though, we can't call the mayor, but if we, I've spoken to Paul over the phone, I've texted him before, and sometimes you get him, and sometimes you don't, and then when you do get him, you don't technically get what you're looking for. So it is just, there has to be a line of communication. There has to be a bridge, not a wall.
The problem is consistent on your side of it and my side, because you just explain exactly my issues too, in terms of just communication, transparency, and just an effort to work together.
Right.
if you had, if it was today, and you had to file your papers, are you running for re-election?
For the Central District, yes. Way too young to take on the mayor's job. I mean, when I was going door to door,
I didn't ask you that.
No.
I know. Because there has been McCarty for mayor comments for sure.
That was like
So when I was
the
going
police
door to-
got 20% on top of what they asked for. You got 20% more than what you asked for.
Yeah.
So when I was going door to door last year, there's people that are like, "How old are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to be 25 by the time the election comes around." And so if I was getting that as a district councilor, you know, and I give Councilor Hamilton credit because I'm sure he got it worse than I did.
Oh yeah.
So I think the perception of the voter, I don't know who they're going to pick for mayor, but I definitely think there's going to be a race.
Yes.
Whether that's in the spring or the fall, we'll find out in the coming months, I would assume. And so I'm going to have to, you know, figure out who I want to support in that race. And I think the community should definitely start thinking about that as well.
I think it would be accurate to say this is been a thought way. It's been a self-inflicted wound. The assumption was he would just, you know, at least 4 years, and then kind of ride off into the sunset. And 6 months into the gig, you got people, like you said, calling for recalls, and already lining up to run. Which,
do you remember what the state legislature said after they were sworn in, and they went immediately for a raise? And they said, right after you're sworn in, one guy actually said, right after this is the time to ask for a raise, because there's a lot of time to forget this before you come up for re-election.
it's true.
So the fact this is happening at this point, and the money's going to come through, the budget matter is going to be settled, kids are going back to school in September. By the time this comes around next January, long gone, long forgotten.
And you know, and that's what politicians, sorry Jim, it's the truth, that's what politicians in general count on, is short attention. So honestly, that's on us. That's on us as residents, as voters. Are you going to have the short attention, or are you going to remember? Because I honestly don't believe that the fires are done. I don't believe he can help himself in terms of these fires and this chaos. But listen, again, huge thank you for coming in short notice. As I said to you even before you came in, open invitation anytime. You know, we didn't get a chance. We were kind of playing phone tag, and you had some health issues before the election, and you know, face to face, I apologize that we weren't able to get a profile done on you, because you know, you didn't need it in that election. But I just want to say, like, thank you for what you're doing thus far. You have been an independent voice. You have not been afraid. You've stood up to the bullying at times. You have been. I think the best thing I can say about you is I can't figure out how you're going to vote on any one thing, you know? So, and that's because you're not in any, or if you are in a voter's block, if you are in an alliance, I you know, you're doing a good job of hiding it, but I don't think I think you just are on wherever you are on every issue.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for enduring the show. Just the social media, and I hope it does seem like it's, you don't want to say you don't want to say to too many people you're enjoying it, but it does seem that you do enjoy governing.
Policy.
Yeah,
I do. You know, I do that from, like I said, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. where I'm surrounded by that element. So it's definitely, I have good people around me, and I ask questions and I listen a lot, and then I try to use that for the city of Methuen. But I don't want to start a political speech at all, so we'll just cut it at that.
Next time, man.
Christina will pick it up on the political stuff.
Huge thank you to Jimmy McCarty, City Councilor. Next up, bringing in State Representative candidate Christina Minicucci. That's right after the break here on Looped In Live, presented by Methuen Family Health Center.
If I was young, it didn't stop you coming through. Ow, ow.
Everyone is cashing in on social media, and all marketing roads lead through social media. If you want to make a splash here in the Merrimack Valley, you need to tap in. This is where the new CEM podcast studios come in. Of course, you can spend your time, energy, and money learning how to wrangle technology to make a podcast instead of running your business. Or you can invest in telling everyone in the Merrimack Valley, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, the Seacoast, or everywhere in the world about your great business, product, service, or yourself. The CEM Podcast Studio is a local audio and video studio dedicated to the craft of podcasts. Their studios feature state-of-the-art recording and mixing equipment designed specifically to produce the best audio and video podcast. Best of all you need to worry about is your show, your business, and your brand. We do the rest. Call 978-686-9966. That's 978-686-9966 to schedule a no-obligation tour of the CEM facilities and meet with a podcast specialist. Or go to CEMpodcast.com to find out more about podcasting services. CEMpodcast.com, your window to the world.
I love talking about my man Val Davila. It's a dream to own your own business, and Val and Susan Davila made that a reality in February 2013. They started with just 2 insurance carriers, but now Right in Place Insurance for Progressive, Safeco, Pilgrim, Plymouth Rock, and Mapfre, just to name a few. Need auto insurance, renters, commercial, or home? Davila and DeFusco prides itself in having lifelong roots in the Merrimack Valley. Put their experience to work for you. Visit them at 225 Broadway or call 978-241-7950 for a free quote, or visit them online at daviladefusco.com. At me until you turn the music down, man.
No, I bring the music down underneath while you start talking.
All right.
It's production value.
It is. This is Looped In Live, presented by Methuen Family Health Center. Lou and I are turning into an old married couple. I very much enjoyed.
That's what radio does to you.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed one of the comments. It had to be one of your friends asking if that's Betty White in the corner.
Oh, I didn't know what that was about. That was related to me?
Yeah, I think it was. Is that Betty White in the lower corner? All right. Huge thank. What's up? Do you leave your phone? Oh, your glasses. Yes. Sorry, Jim McCarty does not want to leave. Yes. Christina Minicucci, candidate for the state representative seat, being vacated by state senate candidate now, Diana DeZoglio. Welcome. Appreciate you coming in very much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for your patience. You know and. Just so folks know, okay, like we're only like what, 6 weeks, 7 weeks?
Yeah, it's about 48-ish days. Yeah. Give or take a couple.
So 48 days until the primary, and so as much as I kid about us, thinking we were going to do Big Brother recaps by now in this time of the summer. A lot of our plan coming into this was that we would have a lot of the candidates on starting back in like June.
Yeah.
We've had some other things going on in Methuen, but we're starting now. We'll have candidates on every week leading up to the election, and we start with you. Thank you so much for coming in. And you kind of walking into the hornet's nest, nest, so to speak. Your candidate is a Methuenite, Lisa Yared Ferry. For folks who don't know you, who is Christina Minicucci?
Who am I?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a politician, so this is totally new to me. So I've never run for office before. I've been very involved in the community. I'm happy to step up. I sit on school building committee in North Andover. I sit on our master plan committee. I've always been one of those people who sees something going on, sees a vacation, not a vacation. I like vacations. See a vacancy, and I step in, and I'm happy to help out wherever I can. I've sat on a variety of boards, committees in Lawrence as well, and I just I'm really passionate about the community. So I've always done that. And when Diana decided to run for state senate, and I was looking around going, who's going to run for this? And everyone's like, how about you? You'd be great. I said, well, I've never thought about going to the state house. Like, that's what would make you great, because you have all the qualities that you need. You're a good listener. You're engaged in the community. You have a business background, so you're really good at reading budgets, understanding budgets. People know I'm a nerd. I love to read. I love policy. When Jimmy says he loves policy, I love policy too. I love that 19-page document. I ate that right up. I love it. And so, you know, those are things that I'm passionate about, and I'm not afraid to ask hard questions. I'm not afraid to get into the fray if I need to, when I have to advocate for what's important to me. So,
how have you managed to? Because everything that I hear is that you've managed to be very active and very vocal in the community, step into those spots where needed, and speak up for people, but yet you haven't ticked off people. You've done it in a way that's. How have you managed to walk that line between being likable and forceful?
Well, I'd say I'm a pretty honest person. I'm a pretty straight shooter. So, you know, when you kind of laugh a little bit about Jimmy, you know, the way he talks, I can be a little bit like that sometimes. So, you know, I'm not afraid to say what I think. And so sometimes that might rub people a little bit the wrong way, but they know, like, it's never personal with me. I don't attack people personally. I might not agree with them, and I'm okay to say I don't agree with them, but I never attack anybody personally. And so I don't, you know, it's factual. It's fact-based, you know, and so if someone doesn't do their job, I'm not afraid to say you didn't do your job, but I don't call them names or hypothesize about why they did the things they did. I try to base things on fact. So, and
we like that in this business. Yeah, it's good.
And I'm a collaborative thinker.
I feel constrained by those particular things, but
okay.
That's okay. I'll still like you. I might disagree with you, but I'll still like you. But you know, at the end of the day, I think it's important. When I'm working with people, is really to kind of get to know where people are coming from. And so I do spend a lot of time kind of, you know, you hear it, like getting to know stakeholders. I've always been a project manager, which means I get together a big group of people, and they're fighting over who wins and who's right and who's wrong. And I tend to spend time getting to know everybody's perspective and trying to find a way to bring people together. And I think that's really what makes me qualified for this job, because it's a lot of what I have to do is listen to a lot of people who have a lot of complaints about a lot of things and figure out how can I help people and how do I advocate for people.
When folks do.
He has a question.
Do you have a question?
I will, yes.
So
go ahead.
When you are out and about door knocking and talking to folks at functions, when they say that, like, how would you know what you're doing if you haven't done it before in terms of the state house?
Right.
What do you tell them?
I tell them I'm a really good learner. I say this all the time, I'm a great listener, but I do spend time. If I don't know the answer to something, I'm happy to find the answer. And I'm not a knee-jerk decision maker. I'm not happy just taking things in and at face value. I really dig in and get to know it. So if there was something I didn't know how to do, I would seek out somebody who could show me.
You don't need to wear the smartest person in the room.
No, in fact, I'm usually the opposite, where I like to go around and figure out who is the smartest person in the room so I can learn from them.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like that's something that I'm not afraid of not knowing everything, because I think most people don't know everything. Sometimes they think they know everything, but most people don't know everything. And I think it's important to acknowledge that and be happy to go after and find the people who do know more than you.
Let's start with you. Now, what is the district encompass? It's Methuen.
Mm-hmm. 3 precincts in Methuen.
Yeah.
3 in Lawrence, 1 in Haverhill. Just kind of nips the edge of Haverhill, and 5 in North Andover.
Okay. So as you've gone, I would assume it's safe to say you know a lot of the issues in play in North Andover.
Yeah. I might know more of the issues in Methuen now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of. Just as an aside, do you find yourself watching these broadcasts and not yelling at the screen at times, but almost wanting to be on in front of the mic in some of these situations. Yeah.
Well, what's been interesting to me, we have like a central TV in my house. I have 3 kids, and so we have one sort of central room where we all watch TV. And I have monopolized the television so much of the past month. My kids are like, "Mom, any day now, can we watch something other than Methuen, community access TV?" I was like, maybe eventually, but this is really exciting stuff. And when we were talking about the pleasure of the council, my daughter, who's 9, was like, "Why do they always say if it's the pleasure of the council?" I said, I think you've watched a little too much, city council.
We've had this too much on. Yeah.
So, but as we got a little off track, but yes, it is safe to assume I feel pretty good about what's going on in North Andover. I've come to know what's going on in Methuen based on, watching city council meetings, talking to people in the city, and I feel comfortable in Lawrence as well. I've spent a fair amount of my time in Lawrence as a volunteer, I guess, as a board member, and so I've kind of got to know all the communities. Haverhill's a little more of an enigma, and so I'm making my way through. I mean, I've always had an involvement in all the communities, but this has been a good learning experience for me to break down those borders a little bit more.
Every community obviously has its own set of issues, as witnessed here, but they're not unique.
No.
What are the most common themes that you're hearing in terms of things that people want addressed across all the districts?
Well, education usually comes to the top. Yeah, I would say education comes to the top because regardless of what community you're in, education is it takes up almost half the budget, right, in all these communities. So it's a really big piece of the puzzle. And whether people have kids or they don't have kids, it doesn't matter who I'm talking to. They know that strong public education is good for the community. And it's good for all the communities. It's not good, if Methuen schools aren't doing well, North Andover is hurting too. We all need to work together to for the health of the area.
Yeah.
So education does come to the top of the list a lot, and people worry about overcrowding in classrooms. They worry about how are we dealing with special education, and how are we going to make sure that we're funding this, or now that we have to we have to educate everybody. That's a requirement. I mean, I have a child who was on an IEP for 7 years, an individual education plan.
Yep.
And
I know.
I spent 7 years fighting for him every single year to make sure he had what he needed. And so, spending time in the schools and seeing every community's issue is a little bit different, but for all of them, that seems to be a core issue, regardless of age and how many children, or if they have children. So that's definitely at the forefront. And people worry a lot about having safe homes in Lawrence is not meaning safe from violence, but safe meaning, it's not going to burn down, that it's a safe place to live, that it's affordable, that it's near transportation so that they can get to jobs. Because right now, that's, public transportation.
That you're building community, you're building neighborhoods rather than tearing them down.
That's right. Yeah. And I think a big issue is that sometimes that job centers are not near public transportation. And though I think that this area focuses on it, it's not easy to get from place to place all the time. So those are the issues I think come up the most. I mean, the opioid crisis is at the top of everybody's list. So it almost feels like those are sort of generic things to talk about, like, everyone talks about education, everybody talks about housing, everybody talks about opioid, but I think that's what really impacts people.
I hate when a term becomes so generic that it's wallpaper.
Yeah.
I feel like that about opioids, right? Yeah. Like it's almost like, oh yeah, opioids. Well, but I mean,
it's real.
It's real.
It's a really big deal, and it affects everybody. It doesn't matter which community you live in. I mean, the president, they try to say, oh, it's Lawrence's fault. It's not. It's everywhere. It doesn't matter what town you're in. It's in North Andover, it's in Andover, it's in Methuen, Lawrence, Haverhill. It doesn't matter where you go. It's an issue. And so it can't keep being glossed over. Treating people is a big deal, and getting people off the streets is a big deal too.
What have you seen in terms of, and I want to ask you about your platform, so to speak, but I mean specifically on substance abuse, how I think most folks want to know, because we've had some strong leaders with Diana, with Linda Dean Campbell that have fought. Frank, I mean, I don't want to, even though Frank Moran has like one street in Methuen, I mean, he's still fighting.
Absolutely.
We've had strong leaders fighting for dollars on the local level. How you? I won't say what needs to be done differently, but how would you make that impact to fight for the programs and the funding to solve this while you're at the State House, but fighting for on the local level?
I mean, I think you're hard-pressed to meet anybody that hasn't had something happen within their family, their friend group, or that hasn't been impacted by opioid abuse. I mean, it's rampant. And I think that what the current legislators have done is they've been constantly pressuring to just bring more and more money and services into the community. So I would want to continue with that. But I think that it seems to me, in talking to people who are kind of entrenched in the community, who are fighting for more monies for opioid abuse, a lot of them say that one of the biggest problems are sober homes. There's a lack of sober homes. So places where people can really go for a month, and they're not going for 24 hours, but they're going to be there for a month or as long as it takes for them to get sober. And right now, that's a real lack, not just in this community, but across the state.
But then you've seen that issue here in Methuen, where, I mean, sober homes typically do tend to be within residential, within neighborhoods. That they're not in commercial zones.
That's right.
How do you? I mean, it's been a very touchy subject here in Methuen with Quincy Street, and how is that done the right way, when there's so little regulation of the sober homes?
Yeah. And that's another one of the issues, as speaking with parents of children who have been in sober homes, or maybe who have overdosed and have not made it. Most of them say that is one of the biggest issues, that there isn't enough oversight in the sober homes, that there isn't enough regulation of who's in there running it and making sure that it's done the right way.
I feel like the concept gets a really bad rap because of what's happened with the leadership in running it as a business and
not as a therapeutic center.
Not as a therapeutic center. How do you solve that problem in terms of just in terms of making folks understand this is a good thing?
Yeah, and when you talk to people who are really impacted by this, they'll say it is a good thing. It is what their children need, or it is what their spouse needs, or brother is what they need to get sober, is a place to call home. It's the same for all of us, right? And saying to someone, "Oh, you have to go behind this industrial building because you're not worthy of society," isn't going to help anybody. So putting homes within the community is an important thing, but again, how do you make sure it's regulated properly so that it is a functioning home for people, like a true home that can fit within a community? And I think that that's something that is constantly evolving, and I don't have all the answers for that because this isn't my area of expertise, but I know that there are people who are working towards that want to work towards making it more like an actual home, not more therapeutic, and not a place where some corporation is coming in and making money off of people who have an addiction problem.
Right. So,
but again, I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure that was the best answer, but it's the answer that I have right now.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of folks say this to me in my area, that media and newspaper publishing is usually a single person's game because you have to be all in on it. And I tell folks I've been married for 23 years. 22 years. I've been together for... Sorry, Debbie.
What's your anniversary?
June 22nd, 1996.
All right.
Boom.
Then it's a math problem,
Good
not
thing,
a priority.
That's right, yeah.
Two kids, 15 and 9-year-old boys. You're in a similar situation.
Yeah.
Folks will say, but everything that I've seen and talked to folks, we run in a lot of the same parallel circles, and everything that folks tell me is that when you're in something, you're all in. You don't get into it unless you're all in on it. This job that you're looking to take on is a new level of all in.
Yeah.
How are you preparing the family
The
unit
troops.
for that. Yeah, yeah.
Well, they're kind of used to me being all in, as you say.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of things. I juggle a lot of things. You know, the pushback that I get from people when I said I was going to run for this, they're like, well, you can't. And I said, why not? And they go, well, who's going to run the library? Or who's going to coach softball? Or who's going to do, you know, it's more of a fear of, we're losing you. Like when I went to my kids' school, all the teachers were like, you are not allowed to run for state rep because you're going to win and then you're going to leave us and there's going to be a gaping hole. So my kids know I'm always involved and I'm everywhere and they're used to coming along for the ride or, you know, being involved in some way also. My son, I have a 15-year-old son who's on his way to being an Eagle Scout, and he has been coming out knocking doors with me, and he is, you know, but he also is out doing the same sorts of things. So I said, all right, well, when I move on to the State House, you guys are going to have to backfill the gap. So, and they've been really good about it. And my husband works in North Andover also, and my mother and my in-laws all live in North Andover.
Yeah.
So my kids already spend a lot of time with, you know, other family members too when I've been working or whatnot. So it will be different for sure, but not as different as you might think.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
There might be a few more miles on my car into Boston, but other than that, like the hours are about as...
I completely understand, trust me.
I'm just happy I'm going to have another driver in the house in a year, so...
Yeah, right? Yeah, serious. But then, is he your oldest?
Yeah. So I got
we're living
15,
that same-
12, and 9, so I got an extra one in the middle of year 2.
And my son's got a girlfriend already, and
Oh,
I
boy.
never, you know, I just didn't expect that. He's very handsome. He definitely gets it from my wife, but I just didn't expect that to be happening so soon. So that now it's like he's going to be driving. Like it's a good thing, but then
Well, I'm hoping my son is a runner, so I'm hoping he'll want to drive because he's always running all over town. He's like, I don't need a ride. It's only 2 miles. I'm like, it's only 2 miles. Like, no. He's like, by the time you get here, I can run faster.
Nice.
So I'm hoping you'll want to get that license and help me out a little bit.
What? So we've talked about substance
Guys
abuse.
haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, no, I know.
Wait.
Everybody tells me. I just can't even.
Well, my 15-year-old's kind of, you know, he's like a little boy still. But my 12-year-old, I'm already seeing it up and coming with the 12-year-old. I go, I got the easy ride with my older son, but the next one, you know, he's the one who wants to have the girlfriend already.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Let me
he's
start
going to be
here.
breaking me in.
Let me give you a chance to address people like me, and I think there are more of us. Everyone's surprised by the way I approach things, but I think there's more of us than there are other people in the state. I grew up in the state. The only party I've ever been a member of is the Democrat Party. I grew up in a union household in Camelot, and I left the Democratic Party because I #walked away because they lost their minds. And so I'm an independent now. I'm not a Republican. Fiscal conservative, social moderate. I like your predecessor, your potential predecessor, Diana DiZaglio, because she's one of the few Democrats I like because she's an independent thinker.
Yep.
She doesn't always feel the need to
Democrat
go party
by
line.
label only, I feel like, you know.
Well,
She has some lean.
she's pretty strongly that way. But in Massachusetts context, she will look at an individual issue, she will make a decision on it, and it doesn't always have to conform. If she doesn't conform with the party stance on this, she won't go with it. We need more of these people in Massachusetts, especially in the state legislature. I've heard you talk about these things, and all I've heard is, these are my concerns. All I've heard is money, and I've heard government solutions. And I don't necessarily believe that's always the answer to every problem here in the state.
Yep.
So talk to me about your approach. You don't strike me as political. In fact, if I asked you the top 4 or 5 people in the Democratic Party in the state, you probably wouldn't be able to tell me.
Maybe 2.
Yeah. And maybe you've had some conversations because you're running, and you will certainly have more if you win the primary.
Sure.
But talk to me about your approach to issues and what your philosophies are about, not necessarily about the individual issues, but what's your philosophy about government's role, taxation, money, public trust?
Right.
How does that land with you?
Well, I mean, we see the issue of public trust right here. We'll start there. That's the last thing you said. But in Methuen where people were nervous because they said, gee, we put our trust in our elected officials and we don't feel like they did right by us because they weren't paying attention. And so for me, the way to hold the public's trust is to pay attention. So you always have to pay attention. And so anyone who's ever sat on a committee or board or anything with me knows that I never sit quietly. Like if something comes up, I'm asking at least one question. Right. At a minimum, how are we going to pay for this? That's usually your job, right? How are you going to pay for this? Is every time I ask that question. And so, I know the importance of having a budget, holding a budget, not saying, okay, we're going to give money to everybody because they want it. Some of it is, what do you need? How do we make this work efficiently? So, but as far as from a public trust perspective, is this person advocating for me? Are they looking out for me, or are they just looking out for how they're, the public perception of them? Right. And that's not going to be me, because it has never been me before. As far as money, when you talk about money, yeah, you're right. I mean, it costs money. Everything costs money, and there's a finite amount of it, right? So it's not like we can keep asking people for more money so that we can keep funding more programs. But I think a lot of it is how can we be more efficient with the money that we do spend? And with regards to education, for example, as we were talking about before, the foundation budget hasn't been looked at for a very long time, right? Since the 90s, really in earnest. So let's look at it. Well, how are we getting money into the towns? Cities like Methuen, towns like North Andover, it doesn't matter where you are. Everybody is struggling with not having enough money from the state level to be able to make ends meet, and so we're backfilling with money from our own budgets, right? So if we look at the foundation budget and find, maybe there are inefficiencies, maybe we don't look at special ed the same way we did 20 years ago, so maybe we need to change the way we're looking at special ed. We need to change the way we're dealing with...
The education formula is older than 20.
It's older. It's from the 90s, right?
So this seems like a key question, and now that you're on the education part of it, especially in the city of Methuen, but throughout the state in general and education finances, how do you feel about unfunded mandates?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question because that's basically what's happening here, right? Is that
it's happening everywhere?
It's happening everywhere in the state. Exactly, it's happening at It happens in every single town and community. We heard about it from the other night from Mr. Cronin, and we heard about everyone. It's happening everywhere across the state, and cities and towns are being forced to make sure that they have money to be able to cover the differential at the end of the year, and that didn't happen here, but other places really struggle. So I think by looking at that foundation budget, it will make a difference as far as looking at the foundation budget will be sure that the towns are getting the money they need for the services that they are mandated to provide. You have to provide people with special education services. If that is something that needs to happen, which it needed to happen with my son, it needs to happen with plenty of people that I know, you have to service children. If you can service them within your school system, you might have a person that you're paying $50,000 a year who can service these children within the school system. If you are not doing that and you're not doing your job, then you need to pay to send them out of district. Now, if my son couldn't have been serviced in district, that would have been $100,000. Yeah. So the price ticket for him would have been $100,000 to send him out of district because they would have had to bus him and all these. Instead, they have somebody on staff, and he had somebody a few hours a day every day of the week. That is a much less of an expense to the town. So, it comes from both ends. It comes from at the state level, making sure we're attending to the needs of the students by today's standards, not by 30 years ago or 15 years ago, today's standards, and making sure that the cities and towns are getting the money they need to attend to students and the state mandates, but then also making sure that within each of the cities and towns that we are paying attention to the types of services we need to provide the children and being flexible. North Andover has done a pretty good job about that with that over the years, and that's been a good thing. But again, I think that we need to look at it on all levels for more efficiencies.
How do you feel about the possibility of a privatized element to education?
I don't like
charter schools.
I don't like charter schools.
You're anti-charter school.
I don't like charter schools. No. And I hate saying that because I know, like right now in Lawrence, it's a stopgap in Lawrence and a lot of places. Again, if we look at it from the big picture and everybody's being funded properly, you don't need to have these charter schools. They're there because there was a problem with the education system, and so these popped up. But now if we were able to reassess how we look at public schools and how we fund public schools, and they're all properly funded and teachers get all the resources that they need to do their jobs, then you don't have that same need for the charter schools anymore.
Outside of the funding, though, you'll have plenty of the charter folks charter school supporters that will say it's not just about the funding, it's about a mentality.
It is.
And
It is.
about being able just throwing away the rubric in
Yep.
terms of how things are handled in
Absolutely.
public education.
Yep.
So but outside of the funding, how do you fix it?
Yeah.
This is more than 15 minutes
No.
conversation
I know.
in terms.
Well, I mean, for me, like, I have
Yeah.
3 kids,
Yeah.
and I've got
We're getting to know each other.
It's
No,
top burner.
yeah.
Yeah, it's front burner.
Yeah. And so for me, education obviously comes to the forefront. I have 3 kids. They're in the public schools, so it's important to me. But yeah, I mean, we need to really look at what we're doing. The high stakes testing. Do we need high stakes testing? Is it working? And has anybody analyzed that yet? And that's why charter. You tend to have these people who break off and want to do charter schools. I mean, I wanted that for my own child because he didn't learn in a standard way. And if you have a child that doesn't learn in the standard way and can't sit at a desk all day and then has to be on a 25-page IEP because they can't sit still because they're 7 years old, that starts to be a problem. And you see why these things
It's about
pop up.
options as well, though, because my household was in Haverhill.
Yep.
My daughter went to school first grade literally across the street.
Yep.
And by the halfway through the first year, my wife and I looked at each other and we've got to get her out of the system.
Yeah.
Because we didn't like what was going on in
Yep.
Haverhill system at the time, and they've done fine since. And
Yep.
I don't want to make a comment on the current system. This is 15 years ago now. And so we had options because my ex was an educator.
Yep.
So she took a job in the Andover system to get the kids in the Andover system, which was the best thing we ever did. And I have nothing bad to say about the Andover system, but it's about options because not every district is the same. State-run approaches don't work well for every kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These charter schools, it doesn't seem like a lot of this conversation is coming out of elitism. It seems like a lot of the conversation is born out of frustration.
Right.
And just tired of the system. Let's make our own system.
Right. And I mean, and right now in the charter schools in Lawrence, they are really serving a very specific purpose. And I'm not advocating to eliminate those schools or anything of the sort, but I do think that they have popped up over time as the result of kind of a big picture educational issue. And when you talk, I know a lot of teachers. I know a lot of teachers in all these communities, and they are phenomenal. I mean, it shocks me every time that these teachers, how hard they work for their students. They love their students as if they were their own children, and they would do anything. And they make it look easy all the time, and that's what's always shocking to me is how easy teachers make it look. Like maybe they don't have pencils and glue sticks and all the things that they need to do their job, but nobody ever knows unless you're a parent or you go into a classroom and go, oh my gosh, you spent $300 of your own money at Target so that you could provide your education to your students. People don't realize that teachers do that.
The problem with public education is not at the front of the classroom, and I don't think anybody's making that case.
No.
It's a systemic structural problem with public education. And again, it's not happening at the front of the classroom. They're doing amazing. And by the way, they're very limited and very shepherded in what they can do at the front of the classroom. And that's part of the problem as well.
And I mean, I am constantly shocked, amazed. I don't know what the words are, but when I meet my kids' teachers and I get to know them and see what they do, and I was like, I am amazed at all the techniques that they have in their toolbox with how they are able to, treat all different kids, with the same level of respect. So I mean, I appreciet that.
Consider that a compliment.
It is,
John's called you a liberal socialist moonbat.
I mean, I do wear Birkenstocks.
Okay.
So
well,
not today. I dressed up for you.
John, I'm sorry, I don't want to show you my mandals.
I won't go that far with her because she hasn't called me an idiot yet.
So I had a.
Well, you let me call you Louie, so I'm all right.
So we had, I told folks that you were coming in. I had one person ask a very interesting question, and it comes back to money. They said to me, ask her if she has a second mortgage. And I said, well, that's a very personal question. I don't think I'm going to lead with that. And I'm like, well, what? And I'm like, why? Because I was intrigued. And this person was like, because second mortgages are are if you can't handle the problems of the first mortgage, you just go out and put a Band-Aid on it with the second mortgage. That's not true. That's not true. That's this person's explanation. I was trying to get to it was a really odd.
Well, it is public record.
Yeah, it was really odd question. But I mean, it kind of, the root of it. Once he explained, I got it. I still didn't agree with it. Yeah. Like you said, I don't agree that that's second mortgages. It's not a failure. It's not a failure of budgetary. But in terms of, I think what this person was getting at was, and what Lou has said is just this idea of just instead of solving the root problem, just keep throwing money at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you tell people? How do you tell, if you got that elevator pitch, how do you sell them that you're not going to be that person?
That's not part of my elevator pitch.
Yeah.
So I'll have to come up with an elevator pitch of how I am not a Band-Aid solution person.
I'll tell you what, many out here are concerned because it seems to me, Michael Graham worked here at the station for a while, and when I was working with him, at one point he said to me, because he didn't come from the state, he's a North Carolina guy, and he said, living in Massachusetts is hard. It's hard every day. They're coming at you every day. And I look at the legislature right now, and they are coming at me in every way possible, trying to nickel and dime me on DraftKings, trying to nickel and dime me with higher parking, fines, everywhere. The legislature is trying to take money out of my pocket at every turn. And I'm not convinced it's for general good. It's just that hasn't been the response. Mm-hmm. So that's my concern. I want people on Beacon Hill who aren't trying to take every last dime from me,
right,
and are trying to do the right thing with the money that they have and have effective policy.
Yeah. And, I mean, I always say I'm probably a little bit naive because I'm not a politician and I haven't sat on Beacon Hill. So, but in general, in the way I, as being a project manager in a variety of different industries, but being a project manager, part of it is like you got to rip everything apart. You have to do everything as efficiently as possible because everything is based on time and how long it takes you to do things. So, the gold standard is on time, on budget, or under budget, and so that's always the gold standard when you're running any kind of project. And so for me, I always feel like you can always do things better, you can find efficiencies, and you look for those efficiencies. So
when I saw that you had project manager in the background, I mean I've done project management, so it's I'm kind of, like you said, nerdy about the reading and the policy. I'm nerdy about like that. Just I love sinking into that. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, and Lou, I know you got Valley Girls coming up at 1, so I just saw that pop up on the screen. So, in terms of Methuen, I've heard people say, "Well, this is one of those races where I wish I could vote for both," because you've made an impression on people. How, for those that you haven't talked to yet, and
there are plenty still.
Yeah. So you obviously came into this knowing that you've got an opponent here in Lisa who's very well liked, had done a lot of really good things for Methuen. So if you get that gruffness from, well, you're not Lisa, or I'm voting for Lisa. How do you disarm them? How do you get them to hear who you are?
Well, I'm not Lisa, but I've met Lisa. Lisa's very nice. It's a little tough, when you're running against someone that you actually like.
Yeah.
So it is hard because she is a very nice person, and she obviously has a lot of people in her corner too. So, but usually what I have to say is the ways in which I'm just the type of person that I am. I mean, when it comes to when I look at the current political situation and everyone's going back and forth, well, who's to blame? And I say, well, she did sit on that city council, and she may not have voted for it knowingly. It's like, but Jimmy McCarty would have asked the question, how the heck are we paying for this thing? Are you sure it's right? And I think that is the responsibility of the city council. And for me, like, again, I don't let things go by without asking questions. And sometimes people think, gee, how does she not understand this? How does she not know this? But I don't mind asking for clarifying questions to get to know the issues. And I'm always going to ask. I'm always going to push back if I'm not quite sure, if I'm not satisfied with the response that I'm getting. And so, so it is hard when I meet people who really like Lisa, because I really like Lisa.
Yeah.
And so I think it just really comes down to feeling like that I am a little more forceful. I have more of a voice, so that I'm not afraid to use. So and that's really the difference. I don't. But again, she's really nice.
I wasn't really going there in terms of in terms of like how are you different from Lisa. It's just kind of more of how do you disarm folks in terms of, well, you're not from Methuen, and I've got a Methuen person on the ballot, and so
in some ways there's nothing I can really do about that, right? There are plenty of people, I'm sure Lisa goes to doors in North Andover and says, I'm not voting for you, you're not from North Andover.
Absolutely.
Because there are always people who are going to stand by their city or their town as the first line of defense. So and there's not a lot you can do about that. Sometimes I just say, well, it's good to meet you, have a nice day, and move on, and
just
other
by
times
doing
I
that,
engage.
you probably make an impression,
and there's not a lot you can do about it, and just sort of the nature of the race.
So I've asked a lot of questions. Lou's asked a lot of questions. What haven't we addressed that you want to get out there about who you are and what you will be as a state rep?
I don't know, but you've asked a lot of questions. We've talked about a lot of things. Maybe things I didn't think we were going to talk about, so it's been kind of interesting. I would say that, I kind of touched on this, but, I love the Merrimack Valley. I love this community, and I'm someone who's kind of always gone to all of the areas of the Merrimack Valley. And I have a lot of family who live in Methuen. When I first came home from the hospital, I went to Knox Street in Lawrence, lived with my family there in the multifamily. Then we moved to North Andover, and so I kind of had a family all around, and I've spent time in all the different places. So I like that. I like the idea that in this position I would get to do more of that and kind of break down those borders. They're kind of meaningless anyway. You go from place to place, and you're in a new town and you meet new people, and I like that. And I'm excited about the policy stuff. Like, I really do get into the 19-page document. I was highlighting and researching and making notes, and my kids are like, what are you doing? I was like, I like this stuff. And I like kind of digging into things and learning about new stuff. So, so it's not really very specific to something that on my platform, but kind of a little bit of who I am as a person, I guess.
So in terms of how people can contact you, how people can get involved with the campaign or volunteer, how do folks reach you?
Well, they're welcome to call me on my cell phone. I give out my personal cell phone number to everybody, literally every person that I talk to. So they can reach me there, 978-490-0897. They can reach me on my Facebook page. They can email me at Christina.
Which is what? Your Facebook page?
It's at Christina 4 Rep, the number 4.
4, yep.
And then also they can call me at Christina at email me Christina at christina4rep.com. So I'm happy to. I love talking to people. I love talking to new people.
I had noticed, What do you feel
Am
like?
I chatty?
Where do you feel like you're at? Like, not having run a campaign before, where do you feel you're at in terms of this marathon and coming down this 7-week stretch here? What's left to do?
Hit a lot of doors. Yeah, I actually am a marathon runner, so I wear my sneakers out. So I wear my Birkenstock, but I wear my sneakers when I door knock, and I say, like, I keep my watch on. I track how many miles, and it's been a lot of miles, and we've been knocking on a lot of doors. So I have a lot of that left to do, and that's just all I've been doing. That's pretty much all I will be doing, probably for the next however many weeks it is. I try not.
The 48
I'll be out
days.
there. Yep.
All right, I'm getting the music. Huge thank you for coming in.
Nice to meet you.
Right back at you. Hopefully, like I said, got some more time in the campaign. Hope if you're welcome to come back for sure.
Anytime you want me back, I'll come back.
So, real quick, we will be off next week. I'm going to try to have some sort of vacation while my kids are still in camp and whatnot. So we'll be back on August 2nd. Yes, August 2nd. The paper is off until August 7th after this July 19th edition that will be on newsstands later today. Huge thank you to the commenters, to the callers, to Lou Blassie, Jimmy McCarty, Christina Minicucci. I did get a little bit of a tan this week. Folks, I did get out and get some sun. I played some golf in our family golf tournament, and didn't suck. So thank you, Uncle Bob, Aunt Marie, Kathy. And thank you again to all the listeners for all the suggestions and all the feedback, and just keep watching. Watch it on demand throughout the week on loopweekly.com under the Loop TV tab, and we will talk. I'll be around. I'm not going to put my phone down, so if you want, you'll see me on our Loop Weekly Facebook page. But we'll be back on August 2nd, and hope you won't forget about us in the interim. For Lou Blassie, Tim Wood, huge thank you. We'll talk to you on August 2nd here on Looped In Live, presented by Methuen Family Health Center.
Waking up.